do it in the form of a webinar or something where people can actually go online and click on it at any point in time, get information about who we are, what we do, how to get engaged, and then they can choose to come or say, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a part of that. So,
could you have a tab on your web?
Yes, we could. We could very well do that. Put it on the web. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad to get the okays from all of you guys.
I'd like to add one thing to that.
Yeah.
What I'd like to learn. Why has there been such a drastic increase in the out-of-wedlock births since the 60s? And what that seems to be the root cause of a lot of poverty.
A very important topic, and I will look at that and see if it's appropriate for this particular conference. But if it isn't, it's still appropriate for us to discuss. Certainly is. The out-of-wedlock children since the 60s, what has caused that? Okay. I'm going to ask each of the committee chairs for just a very brief update on what it is that's taking place in their committees. So those of you who are here for the very first time and you're not sure what you're going to do when we break out into groups, these are the groups we're going to be breaking into: education, employment, healthcare, housing, and transportation. Okay, so these individuals will speak briefly, and then we're going to break out into groups so you can make your decision as to which group you want to participate with. And know that if you decide today that you're going to go with the healthcare group, and you decide next month you want to be with a different group, that's okay. As long as you're still trying to find your way within this organization, Human Needs Network, you can certainly go to different committee meetings until you find your place. I'd like for those chairs to, when they speak, to just come up front for just a minute. Fred, can you come up here?
One of the things that we found, one of the things we want to make certain we do when we go forward is that all of our objectives and activities that each committee does is based upon the needs assessment. And so when we look back at the needs assessment, the number one need that we found in terms of education had to do with being able to afford education, being able to afford to get something beyond high school, get some sort of a certificate or a degree, or even just a credential, something that will allow someone to better their life and have more marketable skills. And so affordability is number one objective. And as we look at the folks who make up those who were involved in the survey, those surveys were conducted at various social service agencies throughout Tyler. How many?
14 agencies.
14 agencies, and how many total response?
Almost 400 families.
400 families. The majority of those individuals are going to be eligible for federal financial aid. And so what we want to look at as a committee is how can we do a better job in Tyler of improving participation in the FAFSA. How many of you are not even familiar with the word FAFSA? Is there anyone that doesn't know what FAFSA is? It's the free application for federal student aid. Well, the majority of those individuals who were interviewed, the first thing they said was, well, I can't afford education. Well, in reality, there's a miscommunication there because they probably can. They just need to have the right assistance in filling out the FAFSA, applying for financial aid, and trying to improve their lives with a credential or certificate. So that's what our number one goal is for education.
Thank you. Mike? Oh, by the way, Mike Tolliver, who many of you know from many meetings, having attended many meetings, is now the co-chair of the Employment Committee. He and Lisa Allen will be chairing it together. And she's not here today because of a death in her family. But Lisa and Mike together will be leading the Employment Committee.
I might have changed my mind. I knew I was going to stand in front of everybody. So on the Employment Committee, we've been working on employment, and we kind of narrowed it down to a couple of scopes. After we got back some of the data, we decided to take another data review, and that would be what do the employers need from the potential employees to hire them. And then we looked at what's active in Tyler. We could do a lot of training maybe for computer skills or things like that, but that may not be the industry in Tyler that's really active right now. Let's just say like what we noticed just from the visual eye, house construction, commercial construction, that's what's hot in Tyler. That's where there's a lot of need. So we just took a little time and did a little checking around, and a lot of these companies, a lot of these small contractors aren't hiring. We want to know why they're not hiring and what's preventing them from hiring. So we have a set of questionnaires and questions that we developed on the committee. We're waiting for that data to come back from these employers on 8 or 10 basic questions on why they're not hiring, what's preventing them from hiring, and what do they need to see in a candidate to hire them. And when we get that data back, then we can start working on some solutions and hopefully get some partners to help us, look at if we get some of these 7 or 8 issues solved, will you be willing to hire somebody?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, JD.
Yeah, that's right. Carlton?
So the healthcare committee, one of the top needs on the need assessment was dental care. So our committee has been working on how we can tackle the dental deficit that is in Tyler. So the first thing we did was we tried to figure out what was already out there and tried to figure out the eligibility requirements, when they're open, how often do they do it, and then we realized that there isn't a lot of consistent dental out there, and so we figured out that we were going to come up with a voucher program. Well, in doing that, we figured out that PATH already had something like that in place, so we have been working with PATH and trying to expand on their voucher program that they have for what they use for patients that need dental help, and we've also been working now with TJC and UT Health Northeast on their DISR project. They have an oral health DISR project, and so we kind of streamlined that. So the dental hygienists are going to be kind of screening the patients before they go to a PATH and getting basic stuff like x-rays, and if they need dental hygiene stuff, doing that, so when the patient goes to the dentist, they already have a little bit of patient history, a little bit of, the x-rays, so that the dentist doesn't have to do all the extra stuff, and they can go there, and the dentist doesn't have to, I don't want to say waste time, but they can do what the dentist does, and not what a hygienist might do. So that's what we've been working on.
Thank you. And Greg?
In the Housing Committee, we've been focused on the number one expressed need from the assessment in the area of housing, which oddly enough is utility payments, being able to afford utility payments and getting assistance with that. So we've been working to try to improve, we decided to focus on 2 areas. One, improving the availability of resources and access to those resources that exist. And number 2, then trying to change the system so that people have more access to utility assistance. There are a lot of rules around utility assistance. There's, in general, a very small availability. So we've been working on developing that database of resources, and so working with 211 and trying to find what's the best way to improve the availability of just information about resources that are available and how to get that word out best. And so in conjunction with that, in 211, and Karen would probably want to speak to this herself, but since I'm here, I'll say something. They have revised their website, so it's not just a phone-in service. If you didn't know it before, you can access the 211 database through their website. Anybody can do that, and they've just revised that website, so it's much more usable, much more user-friendly. So I encourage you to check that out if you haven't yet. But we think that's a good step toward increasing the information that's available about all resources, but from our perspective, especially utility assistance. And then secondly, we're broaching the subject of how to change the game, which is going to come from an advocacy perspective, where we're going to have to advocate with the utility companies and probably with PUC or the legislature to try to change the rules so that more utility assistance can be made available to people There are some great programs out there, and then there's a general lack of assistance in a lot of other areas. So that's what we're finding, that's what we're focusing on so far, has been that number one expressed need. We're starting to broach into what we feel as a committee is the other big need, which is for just the general availability of affordable housing, and especially any kind of supportive housing. And so we're accumulating resource database on that, and going to look at ways to find and improve information and access to affordable housing within our communities.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
Goodbye.
And Christy?
Okay. The Transportation Committee is focusing on awareness and education of how to use the fixed route system in Tyler and the paratransit system. The number one need was gasoline, but it's very difficult to have gasoline cards nowadays. So we decided to see if we could focus on using the existing services that are already here. And you know, transportation is broken down into urban and rural, but we're focusing on paratransit and a fixed route first, and see if that can help save money because it costs $1. So while they're using the fixed route for $1, they could save money for, you know, permanent transportation of their own. So that's our focus right now.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, so it's time now to go ahead and break out into groups. Those of you who are new, hopefully you identified one of these groups and the work that they're doing as what it is you would like to do. I think I'd like to keep the transportation group here with Christy, and then also the employment, Mike Tolliver's group also at this end. So the other three, those of you with education, please follow Fred into the chapel and just find a space where you feel comfortable working together. The same with Carlton. Those of you in healthcare follow Carlton, and those of you in housing will follow Greg. And we want everyone back here at 3:15. I don't know what time it is. 2:40. Okay, it's 2:40. I want everyone back in here at 3:15. Okay?